Hey guys, Passion9 here. Silent Hill 2 Remake. I played the first 4 hours. I'm about 4 hours into this game, and I wanted to give quick impressions, update on how I'm feeling about it. And so far, from what I've played, Silent Hill 2 Remake is the best Silent Hill game since Silent Hill 4, The Room. And that should really mean a lot to people who love or loved this franchise as much as I did back in the day with those first four games. It means a lot. It means a lot, especially since when I found out Blooper Team was making this game, and I found out, um, you know, when I got my first look at it, the early trailers for this game looked terrible. The cutscenes looked terrible. The stuff they showed off with the first teasers and announcements looked bad. It completely missed the tone of the game, completely just threw off the vibe that Silent Hill 2 should have, or any good Silent Hill game. The good news is, the finished product, regardless of how we got here or what steps Blooper Team took to improve things, they have done a full 180, because, even though I have some minor criticisms of these first 4 hours of the game that I've played, they're extremely minor criticisms for the most part. Now, again, I'm only 4 hours in, but the best thing I can say about Silent Hill 2 Remake so far is that it is, without question, a true blue Silent Hill game. It for the first time since 4, I actually feel like I'm playing a real Silent Hill game with, a real, genuine, good atmosphere, great graphics. The sound design and music, of course, is from Akira Yamaoka himself, which might sound like it's a no-brainer, like, of course it's going to be good music and sound design. It's that guy. But believe it or not, that didn't mean a whole lot when he did the music for Silent Hill Homecoming or Shattered Memories. He did the music for both of those games. He was the music director for both of those games, and those games were terrible. So having Akira Yamaoka on board again to do music and sound design, might have sounded like a big deal, but honestly, even that didn't mean a whole lot to me. Masahiro Ito returning to do monster designs and stuff, that's all sounds good on paper, but I still didn't have any faith in this game. It still could have turned out terrible regardless, if the storytelling and level design and atmosphere and all that stuff wasn't on board. But so far, this game delivers. It delivers. Everything about it so far is pretty damn good. Now, when it comes to criticisms, the only thing, honestly, that I could say so far about the game that I still feel the original does better. One would be the pacing in the original games are much tighter. Now, I've only played the first 4 hours, but these first 4 hours can be a little tiring, a little exhausting. Enemies are a lot tougher in this game. In fact, I had to drop the difficulty down to normal in the combat because enemies are ruthless in this one, which is funny because the original Silent Hill 2, you could almost argue, was a little too easy. This one goes really far in the other direction. The enemies are a lot tougher. You encounter them a lot more often. So it feels like combat is just a bigger deal in this one. And yes, the combat itself is definitely, it's smoother, but not necessarily better. It's just more active. There's more of it, and you do encounter enemies a bit more often in this one, I feel. Even when I tone down the difficulty for enemy encounters, which does make it better. I recommend if you're more about the atmosphere and the spookiness and not so much about the fighting in the Silent Hill game, I would definitely consider turning down the difficulty for combat, because otherwise you will die often. The combat is pretty rough in that sense, but turning it down a bit helped, and it's not like the combat in this game is bad or anything, or that there's way too much of it. It's a bit heavy compared to the original game, and that does get a little exhausting. especially since environments are bigger in this one. There's more puzzles. You spend more time solving puzzles and backtracking around the environments and running into a lot of enemies as you do so. So the pacing of this one can be a little tiring compared to the original, I feel, but not enough to like ruin it, and certainly not enough to keep it from being scary and creepy or all that. The enemy encounters, even if they are a bit too frequent in this one compared to the original, I do wish there were like fewer enemy encounters, but there's still, it's handled well because the enemies are creepy, they are scary just as much as they were in the original, and the environments are great, the atmosphere is great. So like, yeah, the pacing is a little bloated compared to the original so far, but another thing I'm really enjoying about Silent Hill 2 Remake is it almost feels like a new Silent Hill game. Putting aside the fact that the story and characters are the same as the original, and are pretty faithful so far to the original, it almost feels like a new Silent Hill game. The environments are very different, even if they're, you know, familiar enough to be a little nostalgic. They're very different. Some of them are pretty big. They're like bigger, they're more expanded. The Blue Creek Apartments, which is where I'm at right now, it's as far as I've gotten so far, has some whiffs of familiarity about it, some similarities to the OG, but it's a very different environment. It's a very different location. The rusty, hellish otherworld comes into play a lot earlier in this one than in the OG. Without like getting too spoilery for people who haven't dived into it, but like, yeah, it's interesting because it's not necessarily bad, and it's not necessarily better than the original, the way they handle that stuff, the environments and the level design. It's just different. It still feels like Silent Hill, it's still creepy, it's still atmospheric, and it's good. I mean, I do think the cutscenes and voice acting, I have somewhat mixed feelings about, but even that stuff is really good. Like, it's not as dramatic as the OG voice acting and character interactions and stuff, where the characters seemed a bit more rattled and nervous and kind of a little more over the top in the way they conveyed their emotions and stuff. This one, characters and voice acting is kind of subdued. It's very, I guess you could say it's almost more like like Hollywood kind of. It's got more of an HBO vibe. I don't know, like it's not bad. It's very good voice acting, and like the cutscenes are pretty faithful so far to the original game. But yeah, overall, so far pretty good in a lot of respects. I'm enjoying it, even though there are differences, and even though there are things that feel very different. It's a very good game from what I'm playing of it so far. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. First 4 hours have been really good. First 4 hours have been really good. And I hope that the rest of it is every bit as good. Because so far, the best thing I could say about Silent Hill 2 Remake is that even though normally I would want a remake to be as faithful to the OG as possible when it's something I hold this sacred, Silent Hill 2 Remake almost feels like a new Silent Hill game and a remake at the same time. And that's not bad when it's doing both elements as well as it's doing it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Silent Hill 2 Remake so far. I'm enjoying it. Blooper Team has surprised me, and I'll be giving y'all more updates as I get further in. Bye. Live for the passion.